Do you like movies and television? Would you like to learn more about the magic behind the movies and learn how they get from the minds of the creators to the screen? Do you consider yourself a bit of a film buff and would like to know more without going back to school? Then this is the show for you. Mincing Movie Magic is a broadcast designed to stimulate your intellect and explore the minds of screenwriters, producers, directors, and others behind the scenes who create the real magic we see on the screen. Each week, you can listen to screenwriter and producer Tom Blomquist and professional magician Scott Wells as they discuss film and the magic that goes into every production. From time to time, they welcome friends from the movie industry to give other points of view that brought their visions to life on screen. This is Mincing Movie Magic. Please welcome Hollywood writer, producer, and director Tom Blomquist, along with your host, Scott Wells.
Hey, there we are. Good evening, Tom. How are you this evening, sir?
I'm good, Scott. How you doing?
I'm doing just fantastic. Yes, I see we got a few people who have joined us already in the room, so welcome. Thank you guys very much for coming back again this week and to join us over here for Mincing Movie Magic, where we are actually deconstructing movies and film and television by going deep and finding out what it is that makes magic, whether what makes movies magical. And we, of course, then Tom was a person who not only was a screenwriter, but also a producer and a film instructor out. Now, where were you again? What was the school?
Well, I actually taught at several schools, American Film Institute, USC, and Chapman University, UCLA, but I became a tenured professor at California State University, Long Beach. And that's where I met this guy who.
That's where your T-shirt says.
Oh yeah, here, hold on.
Represent there.
I wore this for all of you Tyler Stratton fans out there that are checking in, and for Tyler himself. That's where I met him, and I was listening to the intro, and occasionally they invite friends from the industry, and this is someone who's not just a friend, and I'm honored to say that he became one, but a former student from Cal State Long Beach in the film track and a film production track, and so it's been really cool to watch his progress and catch up with him over the years. So let's get him in. Let's talk to him.
Let's do that. Let's welcome over here Tyler Stratton. Hey there, here he is.
Hello,
hey Tyler,
everyone. Hey Tom. Hey Scott. Thanks for the intro. Thanks for having me, you guys.
Well, it's really great to see you, and it's been a couple of years. I left Los Angeles 3 years ago. I think you came to campus 4 or 5 years ago while I was still there and talked to the students. And I know you go back regularly, virtually or in person. And that's really great to share.
I actually just taught a class yesterday, or talked to a class yesterday. Yeah, it was great.
And it's great to share what you know. And as you now know, when you've been doing this for a few years, there's a ton of stuff to share that can't be taught in a classroom. I don't care who the teacher is, what the book is, or what your experiences are on the set with your fellow students. You can only learn it in the real world. And it's great. You know, that's why I got into teaching, was to try to share some of that with you guys, and that you go back and do that is really wonderful. I would say, Scott, by the way, that Tyler graduated from Cal State Long Beach in 2009, and he was there for a couple of years. You transferred from I
was a technical theater major back in Ohio for 2 years. Before I realized that I didn't want to be in a black box forever, and I wanted to direct film, but I didn't know what ADing was. So I came out to Cal State Long Beach, that it was the best fit for me. And then as soon as I found ADing, I remember distinctly walking into Tom's office and being like, "Is this a career? Can you like make a real living being an assistant director?" And he's like, "Oh yeah,
no.
He's like, "Don't do it. No, run."
But is this also a path to being a director? In other words,
It can be among many different paths. It is definitely a path. It's the same union. The Directors Guild of America is the directors union, and it is also the ADs union. That is a path many people take, but you can do it in a bunch of different ways. There's no one way to become a director or become a writer or a producer. There are many. So it just depends on your style and take. I don't personally have any design to do that. I would rather take Tom's path and end up being more on the teaching side, the academic side, later on when I'm ready to slow things down, rather than go to directing.
And Scott, what's interesting about what he just said is that, not, as we know from past conversations, you know, there are many paths to becoming a director. You can be the actor on the show, as Mark Gant was in a previous show. You can be a cinematographer. Certainly a lot of writers become directors and producers, ADs, and occasionally some production designers. But each of those jobs has real specific skill requirements, which I know Tyler's going to talk a lot about tonight. And being the assistant director doesn't necessarily prepare you to be a director in all of its elements. It can, as he said, but it's so specific in the logistical, organizational, and political components of what guys like Tyler do that a lot of guys and gals love doing that job once they're in it, and they don't want to leave it because there's a certain control and a contribution that is monumental. I mean, there's nothing like a great assistant director, and major directors bring their first and second assistant directors with them on different shoots because they are a team, a true team, and which Tyler will explain, I know, this evening. So
we're going to be using
great.
We're going to be using some terms also, as we just to abbreviate, of an assistant director, an AD. So if you hear us refer to AD, that's what an AD does. First AD, second AD, which is different from a technical director, the TD, which is the television thing and everything. But and you don't necessarily work up from a second to a first to the director's chair. Again, there's not really a path.
There is a path from, there is a hierarchy of ADs that it actually goes additional second AD to second AD to key second AD to first AD. Then there's actually a position called a UPM, unit production manager. Although the first AD and the UPM's jobs are very different, but it's still in the same category in the DGA. And then you could upgrade to a director, but they're not. You could skip some. You could go straight to some. It just depends on what industry you're in and where your experience sort of lies.
Well, what's the difference between a first and second AD?
Well, so great question. So first AD is when you watch the bonus features on a DVD and you see them say on the set of Spider-Man, there's someone in there going, okay, guys, pictures up and action. That's probably the first AD. It could be the director, but generally speaking, the first AD is the gal on set who is calling what we're doing, where we're looking, what's going on. They are the sort of commander, maybe not the chief, but the commander about the set of letting everyone know where we're looking and how we're going to go about the shots. And they'll work closely with the director. And the director may say action, they may say cut, but they may not. They may just let the first AD do that for them, especially in large action sequences when they're coordinating lots of people at once. So that's the first AD that does the big picture. They run the show from a logistical standpoint on set. And the second AD is very different. Their job is kind of worrying about making sure tomorrow is ready. They make what's called a call sheet, and they spend a majority of their day amassing all the information and double checking all the information that goes on that call sheet. They'll be on set, but they'll kind of work out of the trailer, like at base camp, and they're lining up everything for tomorrow, that making sure that the schedule that was set out beforehand, we have everything that was supposed to be there, that it is in fact coming.
By the way, by the way, Scott, I just want to identify what a base camp is. When you're shooting a movie, let's say you're shooting in Times Square, and you've got a sequence with the actors walking and talking around Times Square. Where the trailers and the wardrobe and all the support staff are, and where everybody parks their cars, when they could be a mile away, literally. Yeah. And so that's base camp, and somebody runs base camp, and they communicate with the first on the set, wherever the set is, let's say Times Square, and they're communicating. So if Tyler says, I need actor A and B on the set in 15 minutes, the second, who's running base camp, goes in the makeup trailer and says, we need our people now. They got to get in the van. We have to drive them, transport them to wherever the first unit is shooting. It's very complicated sometimes. And that's what firsts do. It's why they tend to pick their own seconds and the seconds who are helping the second. Yeah. But that's why, because sometimes the base camp is 25 yards away, and sometimes it's a mile away.
Yeah.
And especially if you're doing a city, if you're shooting in New York City, can you imagine? Your base camp can be on 3 blocks away on a whole side of a street with all these RVs and trailers and trucks and people. And that coordination will kill you at the end of the day if guys like Tyler and his second, or if Tyler is the second, the first and Tyler don't have that done properly.
So you have to have that shooting schedule down perfectly, so you know what's going to be happening at a certain time, because it's going to take 15 minutes or a half hour to drive there and bring them back and everything, I assume.
And you try and pre-plan that out, that you have a good idea of, you know, if John Doe is going to take an hour in hair and an hour in makeup because he's got to put tattoos on or whatever, you know, to give him X amount of time. All right, we need to give him 2 hours and 30 minutes to get ready. And the second's really going to plot all that stuff out and provide that information to the first. Be like, hey, this is when we need to bring them in to get ready so that you can have them on set. You just tell me what time you want them. Then we'll back it up and make sure that you have enough time in case you're ahead of schedule or you're behind schedule. And they have a team of people that help them as well. That there'll be a base camp AD, but sometimes it's a production assistant that is doing that job who just helps run the base camp so that the second can go around and help get it that information for the next day.
Right. The other thing too is, like, for example, Scott, if you have children in the show, minor children, they have to go to school for so many hours a day. Yeah,
with a studio teacher.
You have a studio teacher. You have a teacher. A certified teacher in a trailer or someplace, and the kids all go in there and they get, let's jam some info into them while they can. Somebody has to coordinate that. We need the kids. Well, we can't because they're in school. You know, I mean, somebody needs to be mindful.
Kind of acting as a principal of school in a way.
Yeah. And then the other thing that guys like Tyler do is the second AD is responsible for the background action, which I know Tyler's a bit of a specialist at. But if you have 50 or 100 extras in the background of the scene, somebody choreographs that so they all know what to do. They all have a little personal bit of business that they do. 2 people are walking, and then they change coats and they walk back the other way, and it's different people with a hat on or whatever. Somebody has to figure that out. And that's what the second does, because the first can't be bothered with it. First is really busy, and the director can't be bothered with it. They go, okay, here, I want this, let's do it. And somebody has to artfully create a realistic slice of life for the background so you never notice them. And that's, you've seen whether they're sitting in a restaurant and they're all pretending they're talking, or it's a busy city street, or onlookers watching a fire, or whatever it is. So talk a little about that, Tyler, because that's a really...
Oh, yeah. I do a lot of that work. So that job is often covered by what's called a second AD. It's confusing. Why isn't it called a third AD? Second, are you a second squared? I like to think of it that you're the second AD. I don't know why it's called that. In Europe, they're called thirds. But a second AD is an AD that is on set with the first, and they work very closely together, and they are that person's right hand, person. So that if I'm the second on a show, and let's say Michelle is the first, she might be on set with the cameras right next to it, and I might be back at the Village with the director and relaying any notes. Village, being Video Village, where all the monitors are, and you have the script supervisor and some executives watching. That'll be a few feet back from the actual set. So the director may give notes and watch the monitor, like, hey, these background people don't look right, or make sure we have another person in here. And then when we cut as a second, I'll run in and I'll make the adjustments, or I'll work with a team of background production assistants, and I'll radio to them and say, hey, we add an extra person there. That crossed, it was too early or too late. That one guy's looking right at the camera, adjust these things. And I really love doing that. I really like working with background artists and extras, and it's high energy, it's fast paced. Sometimes you have to set 100 people in 5 minutes because that's all that, chasing the sun is about to set, and that's all you got. So you just got to run through and do it. And I like that high energy stuff. So the second does that. And they also help at the end of the day when they wrap, they're the last person to leave so they can fill out what's called a production report, which is basically a giant time card for the entire production, so that the production knows who did what or how long they worked. And we have some examples we could show a little later.
I was going to say you had sent a couple of things. Would you like me to show one of those call sheets or something here first?
Yeah, let me start with the first one. So the first assistant director is usually the first AD to get hired on the show, and they will start several weeks before they start shooting, or if they're already shooting and they're going to do a different episode, they'll start between 3 and 6 weeks beforehand, and they'll create an entire schedule using a program mostly called Movie Magic Scheduling. Not to be confused with Mincing Movie Magic, they'll make the shooting schedule, which is it's called a strip board or a one-liner. If you scroll down for that, for this, Scott, this document, they take the script and they break it down into single lines that breaks the essential information. That scene Apple 137 is interior Jules' house living room. Here's a quick description of what happens in the scene, and we have broken down what continuity day it is. Is it day? Is it night? It's the 25th day in the movie, according to this, and the scene is 1/8 of a page long.
And who's in it? The numbers of
yes. And then the numbers on the right, it says number 10, and I think it says number 10 of this particular thing. That's actor number 10 is in the shot, and there's a list of the actors' numbers at the top because you don't want to list out John Doe, Mary Michaels, like all that. You've got their names right there.
So number 1 is Tom Cruise. Number 2 is whatever, and so everybody knows your number 1, and pretty soon they're all known literally by that. The actors know exactly what number they are.
Excuse me,
and it sure streamlines things for everybody, both space-wise on these documents, but just in terms of talking in shorthand.
You could take a quick look at this and you understand, oh, we're shooting interior Jules' house day, and then we're going to shoot interior Jules' house night. You color code the strips just to make it easy to look at and easy to group. The most common being that green is for interior night while blue is for exterior night. You try and group all those things together. You don't shoot a movie the way that you watch it. Like every time they go back to Jules's house, for example, we shot all those scenes together. We probably shot there for 3 days in a row, and then that scene gets cut up and added to the movie. So the first AD will break this all down, but they'll also add information about what costumes we need, what special effects, what any special equipment that's needed in that, or how many extras. And that information is more detailed. And Scott, if you go to the next page, the shooting schedule, that looks like this page here. You have that written here that you can see, well, we need a special effects coordinator. And we have background breakdown. We have modern club people 20 is listed in that. So people can take that breakdown and they know what is needed for that particular day.
And by the way, like if there's smoke, well, that's a special effects person with a smoke machine, or 5 people with 5 smoke machines. And that's noted, Scott, on these kind of documents that also then turn up in the call sheet. So everybody knows, oh, this afternoon we have the smoke guy, and somebody has to do that. And there's specialties for all those kind of effects. But that when I've said previously and in the promos for this episode that the assistant director is the center of the logistical planning, now you're maybe getting a sense of.
So the AD prepares this page,
yes,
right?
Absolutely. Yeah, they prepare.
And you're working closely with the director.
Yeah, the director will more say like, hey, I want a club that's full of people. Make sure we have lots of people. And then the ADs will look at, well, how big is the space? And I think we need 40 people for this. But then the producers might be like, we can only afford 20. And then will put. And
you will location scout together with the director. So a bunch of people, Scott, get in a van, and they know that you have a disco club. So the location manager is a person who has found locations, shown pictures to the director and the AD in advance. They say, yeah, let's look at these 2. And then they'll drive in a van with the production designer and a bunch of other people. And the line producer maybe, or the production manager, they'll go and they'll look at these locations. They'll figure out what the problems are. The lighting is bad here. Oh, this is great there. This is too whatever. And then when they pick one, that's then what the assistant director will refine on a document like this. Yeah. So it is realistic, not just to what the script wanted or what the director said he wanted or she wanted, but what the location actually is. So Tyler's talking about how big is the space. Well, it's not Studio 54 and it's 3 levels and it's 500 people. It's actually a small club and it's going to be 75 people will look like it's packed.
Sure.
And they all make those adjustments.
Yeah. I think is that the first AD doesn't necessarily have to come up with all of this information on her own. That other departments will come to them and be like, hey, we're going to need this for that. And the second AD will help amass all that information to figure it all out. But all of that gets compiled here in the shooting schedule. And on a daily basis, it gets transferred onto the call sheet so that everyone can be reminded, hey, tomorrow this stuff is coming up. And it's not like people read the call sheet and they're like, oh, we need a smoke machine tomorrow. I didn't know. I got to go scramble to get one. It's their own job. They have their own lists and they track that stuff as well. But this is, as Tom said, it's a central hub. It all flows through the AD department.
And Scott, during the preparation process, let's say 7 days of preparation for a 7-day TV episode.
Right.
Towards the end of those 7 days of preparation, there's a production meeting. The first assistant director runs that meeting, and they go through this document, and they go through the script related to this document. Okay, on day 3, this is where we need the helicopter. It lands in the middle of the intersection, and the helicopter pilot is there. The stunt guys are there. Everybody's there. If there's a problem, that's where it is ultimately figured out. Or they say, okay, we'll have a side meeting later. We'll fix it, and everybody, you'll get a revised schedule later. But the assistant director is not only in charge of the logistics of the set and all this preparation, but also the safety on the set. So if there's something that's going to be happening, stunts, fire, explosions, whatever, the assistant director is the one that makes sure that there's a safety meeting with the entire crew in the cast before they make a shot. You can talk about those meetings. You do them all the time. But safety is everything. And the first assistant director is designated by the Directors Guild and the entire industry as the final word on safety. And if he or she says, that's not right, we're not doing it, it doesn't happen. And that's
an interesting thing as of 2020 is now there is an entire health and safety department that exists because of COVID. So there's actually a shared amount. All that still happens, but there is actually a health and safety manager on set now that also can weighs on those things. Less about stunts and more just about keeping good protocols. But it's an interesting change in dynamics in the last year.
That's new. That's very new.
Entirely new department, obviously.
Yeah, interesting.
So is there also a storyboard that goes with this, and Tyler, sometimes?
Sometimes. I would say there are only storyboards in complicated action sequence. Not only. I would say most commonly there are storyboards for complicated action sequences. Like when I was working on Ford versus Ferrari, they had boards for every shot that they wanted for every race sequence for that movie. So we, on second unit, we were on action unit, which is a unit that doesn't have any of the main actors. We didn't have Matt Damon or Christian Bale. We just had stunt people, and those stunt people drove the cars, and main unit might shoot Christian Bale driving like this and then cut to a shot of his car whipping by camera. And on action unit, we shot them whipping by camera. We had storyboards for all of that stuff, but for a normal day-to-day thing, they often don't, because usually the director doesn't know how they want to shoot it until they've blocked the scene. Blocking being when the actors come in and rehearse the scene and decide where they're going to move. And, they realize the bed's over here, not over there, or the refrigerator's too far away. Like, I don't think I should get up and go to the refrigerator. It doesn't feel right. So then they change.
Scott, you have a shot list in there, a page from a thing that Tyler and I put together.
By the way, while we're on this, by the way, just as an aside, I noticed that this was for Valley Girl, I guess back in 2017. I had an idea a long time ago about having one that'd be a kind of a comedy called Valet Boys, about the valets, for, a high-end restaurant or something, and kind of the crazy antics and shenanigans that they can get into. I just thought Valet Boys would be funny parody on that. Anyhow.
Tyler's going to make that starting next week with his.
There you go. I'm already on it. I'm writing that down.
Okay.
So, cold right there.
Go to the shot list.
Sorry.
Which is a really fundamental and basic document, and it isn't real in the sense that.
Is that this right here then, Tyler?
No, it's you don't have it open in a tab. It's
one I sent you. That's what a script looks like, everyone. In case you don't know, this is what a screenplay looks like. And you see the in the all caps there, Where number 5 is, that's called the slug line. That's the location.
Exterior, Portuguese fishing vessel or village, street.
Exterior. And what scene number it is, scene 5. So scene 5, it'll appear on all the documents that Tyler generates as scene 5.
Yeah.
And then the little asterisks on the right are any line that is changed in the revision process, whether it's one word or the whole line, gets an asterisk. So the actors know, everybody knows something changed from the last version that I had.
And that part's really important, because if you come out with the script and you're like, on page 16 this is a good example. On page 3 is the action sequence. And then you come out with a new script and you make changes. You don't want to change every page number that ever exists. So you add a new page called 3 Apple that goes between page 3 and page 4. You might do the same thing with a scene. You might add a scene between scene 5 and scene 6. And that scene might be called, Apple 5, or sometimes they call it 6 Apple, or it just depends on the company. But that makes new versions of the script, which they color code. I know
the pages are all conformed there for page. Yeah. It's still 1 through 120, but there may be 5 new pages in between. There may be some omitted pages in there as well, and Tyler can explain the rainbow of colors of pages.
Yeah.
But every version of something, the schedule, the script pages, has a different color in a very specific sequence. It's the same all over the world in every country.
So the paper is different color. I mean, like a yellow or
red. So the most common ones it goes white, blue, pink, yellow, green, goldenrod, and then there are more, but a lot of times people will just repeat back up to white again. They'll go double white.
So someone could then say, okay, did everybody get their pink pages today?
Yeah, there are new pages, pink pages. They'll be on pink paper. It'll say pink at the top.
And it says pink, and everybody knows that followed the one before in the sequence, and they can look at that page compared to the one from the day before, see where the changes are, see if the changes matter to their work or not.
And the scriptwriter's making those changes, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And and distributed by the production office, and they're made for a million reasons: legal reasons, creative reasons, production reasons. We don't have a bowling alley. We now have to shoot in a laundromat, and the scene is rewritten for a laundromat, and suddenly there's yellow pages that come out, and it's a new location with new props and new whatever. Yeah. And so the AD administers that with the production office, with the production coordinator or the script coordinator who's distributing this stuff, and make sure everybody in the set, somebody make sure that they get their copy in the mail or under their hotel room door or whatever they're doing. And on the set, there's copies flying around. And then you put them in your notebook in the right order, so you always know you're current. Producers have assistants that do that for them, and the director does, so they know. They've got all the versions of a scene, and they know what changes there were and how it affects what they're trying to do.
You might literally take out a white page, page 3, and put in a blue page, page 3, that has a couple of lines that have changed on it. And then when the pink one comes out, you might take out some more pages or just add more pages to it. So you end up with this multicolored script, or you may just be like, hey, can I just get a pink script? And someone will just print you a whole new one for that.
And the ADs are, they'll generate, the production department we call them, but they'll generate a blue and a pink and a yellow shooting schedule as it changes.
Yeah.
Everybody knows, oh, that white one I had is now obsolete. So
is this the shooting? Is that the shooting schedule right there?
This is a shot list.
Yeah. And so at some point, it's helpful, not mandatory, but helpful.
It doesn't always happen.
Doesn't always happen. But if the director is organized and has a good relationship with the AD and the direct photography, it's helpful to say, here's what I have in mind. This is a scene I'm going to do in a master with no coverage, meaning camera angles. Mm-hmm. This is one I'm going to shoot with like 8 camera angles. And that's discussed. And this document is often distributed to some key people, the production designer, the direct photography, certainly the first AD, and the script supervisor. And then everybody can kind of know. So the AD could say, well, Tom, as Tyler has had to say to me, this was a show that Tyler was my first pilot. You're falling behind. You got too many shots for the amount of time you have left. And I go, well, gee, what am I going to do? Well, here's what I think. I've been thinking about this. What if you got rid of this shot? What if you did a master here instead of that? But if you don't have a plan, you can't have those solutions except in a panic, frenzied state. So if you're James Cameron and you got all the time in the world and you can shoot, try things 8 different ways, well, fine. Good for you. God bless you. But we mere mortals have to work on a schedule in a responsible way. And this is a responsible way for a director to communicate with the key crew members. This is what I have in mind. And then they go from there. And it changes.
A lot of times when I'm firsting and someone has a shot list, I may just take their number of shots and be like, okay, you've got 42 shots listed. We've got a 12-hour day, but we got an hour set up, and we're going to have this much wrap time at the end minus lunch. We really only have like 8.5 hours of shooting time. Let's divide that by your 40 shots. Okay, that's really only this much time. So you can get an idea of like, maybe that's too many, where that we're going to need to cut some stuff out. A lot of times in practice, especially in TV shows, they move so quickly, there won't be a shot list. It'll just be, they come in, they block the scene, and then the director's like, all right, I want to get a master, 2-shot, and then coverage. Or let's skip coverage. Let's just go this weird overhead shot, and then everyone knows what we're looking to set up in that time. Having shot list is fantastic. It's wonderful. It often doesn't happen on the daily grind, but on features, they usually have more time to prepare. So they often have a shot list or storyboards more often than features.
Yeah. And when a director is preparing, the director is reading the scene over and over and over again. They've been to the location. They've picked the location. They know who's in the scene, and they will sketch out, sometimes just with little stick figures and arrows on a piece of paper, like a football play, how it's going to go. They know what it means, and that's enough. They're organized. They understand that there's 4 people in the scene, and they're not all standing lined up against the wall. They're moving around, and every time somebody moves, that means the camera's got to move with them, or you have to have other angles to cover them for editing. And they know, presumably, every time that staging gets more ambitious, it's going to have to be more complicated in terms of moving the camera and lights and stuff to get all those shots. And this is helpful. Storyboards are helpful. Some guys are like really good artists. There's also computer programs that'll generate really basic, frames that'll show this is what I have in mind. And then it'll go to this kind of setup and then this kind of setup. And all the people that have been doing this have been doing it a long time, and they understand immediately what the kind of overview of that is. It doesn't necessarily, it's not carved in granite, that's for sure. And as he's saying, a lot of directors are just winging it. They have a vague idea of what's going to happen, but they don't know until they get there. Unfortunately, that can slow you down, and anything that slows you down can then really hose you at the end of the day when you're 2 hours behind because you let all those little minutes add up of sitting around trying to think of what you're going to do. It's really helpful if you know exactly what you're going to do.
Tyler, you had also mentioned just a moment ago something you started to go into about some of the differences. What is the difference actually being an AD for on a television show and a series as opposed to a movie?
A fantastic question. A feature film will be that everybody gets hired and starts prepping, and you may prep for months for the show. You'll scout all your locations for the whole movie. You'll line it all up. You'll have multiple meetings to make sure you're all set and ready to go. And then you will hit the ground running, and you'll start shooting, and you'll go through it could be a 20-day feature. It could be a 60-day feature. It could be a 120-day feature. It depends on the level of it all. Most films are around the 60-day area, but you have a lot of that planned out ahead of time. Well, television shows, they don't shoot 2 hours of content. They shoot, 10 hours of content for a 10 episode, or if they're doing the classic, 24, 26 episodes, you're shooting 26 hours of content. So there's no way to scout for all those things. A lot of those episodes haven't even been written yet. They don't know where it is. So they end up doing a rotation system where I'll call it episode A, or the pilot, will have one assistant director and may have one second assistant director. They'll prep that show and they'll start shooting it. And when they start shooting, the next group B, will start prepping. There may be a first AD and a second AD that just works for that episode, but there might only be one second AD. It just depends on how hard the show is. And they'll work on episode B. And once the first episode finishes, they'll take over, and the group B directors or assistant directors will come in with their director, and they'll work on that. And then the first group goes back to prep, and they just sort of leapfrog each other back and forth through that episodes. And that's very common. And some TV shows will even have a third group, depending on how complicated it all is, or if they wanted a director to do multiple episodes. There's all kinds of different versions of it. But a television show might shoot for 8 months straight, or even longer. So because it's so much longer, you can't look at all your locations yet. They want to see how the first episode turns out, to be like, oh man, this day player character, a character who only plays on a single day or a couple of days, they were phenomenal. We should write them into more episodes. Well, that's going to change the whole landscape of the rest of the season. Wow. So they may adapt to that for future stuff. That's why a lot of episodes are not all written at the beginning, and then they'll come in and be like, it's not going to change. Like WESTWORLD, as an example, that they almost never had a script entirely finished until they had shot it, basically. That they were constantly changing it and seeing the flow of the actors, and that these scenes worked and these scenes didn't. Let's change this. And that made it for a very chaotic work environment for the ADs, but it makes for some excellent television. I mean, it's a very good show. So, there's a give and take between all of that.
Was that one of your least favorite experiences whenever it's going to be something?
I was at a Directors Guild meeting, and everyone just went around and said, you say your name and what you're currently working on. And everyone's saying, oh, I'm working on this, working on that. And I'm like, oh, I'm Tyler Stratton. I'm working on WESTWORLD right now. And the whole room goes, oh, that's tough. Oh, there's like an audible groan. I love the show. It's fantastic. And I have immense respect for the creators, Jonah Nolan and his wife. But it's a difficult show to work on logistically, because there's so much going on, and because they have the creative power to change what they want at any time. So that means that they could never really get a handle on what we're shooting more than a couple of days out.
And by the way, Scott, this brings up a really kind of classical point of conflict between the production department and the creatives, the writers on a show, and even the directors, which is that some shows are really well organized and decisive in their scripts and whatever, and they don't get a lot of interference from the studio or the network. And others, less so. They may be getting a ton, like on WESTWORLD, who knows where some of that was coming from, but it could have been the network. It's giving them notes and changes, and they're very mercurial sometimes. So whatever the reason, some shows are prideful about getting the scripts. You're going to have a shooting script on the first day of prep.
Yeah.
Some shows, you barely have an outline that you have to prep from. And by the end of your prep, it's already obsolete. And they are literally making the things up as they go. And later in the season, more so. At the beginning of the season, they got a bunch of finished scripts. And by the end of the season, they're barely getting them to the set.
Yeah, you're getting peak pages the night before. Yeah. Exactly.
And I have personally gone to the set, watched some stuff shooting, and then go, I could do better than this, and go off and rewrite or write a whole new scene and say to the director, I got a new scene for you. We got to figure out how we're going to get this shot. And because it was a creative imperative, that was like an epiphany that hit me, and we were well organized. We had these scripts done well in advance, but now you're there. You have human beings. They're saying the words. You're in the location. You're inspired by stuff. And you also realize that there's flaws in the material that you got approved that you can do better. And if you have the time and the power or the authority or the collaborative spirit on the set to actually do better, you try to.
Yeah.
And that's what he's talking about. But it's very disruptive. And sometimes the production guys hate the writers for that, or the actors hate the writers for that, because how dare you, throw these curveballs at us at the last minute.
Yeah. But, I love working on WESTWORLD. I just want to say I love working on WESTWORLD, and I love that team. So
and awesome. and a great show. And you never know where or why delays in material are coming from.
Yeah,
I worked for an executive producer once who was proud of the fact that they're not going to get the script till I say they're going to get it. What?
Okay.
Okay. you big jerk. But it was a power play on his part, that if I get the script to him at the last minute, then the network won't have time to reject it, and they're just gonna have to shoot it the way it's written, and nobody can do their artistic improv piece on it. Well, that's nuts. That's a terrible way to run a show.
Yeah.
And that's not what you were dealing with there at all. But there are people who are jerks or just disorganized. They can't decide. They don't know what to do. And it's a common problem for the production department, Scott. Is the only reason I'm bringing that up, is that
that's stuff we got to deal with. That's our job.
Guys have to deal with it. Whatever it is, they got to deal with it. And sometimes there's a million reasons why it's not fully organized and fully ripened fruit on the tree. Sometimes
it's a little bit different also on episodic shows. If it's for something that is, let's say, like Netflix or HBO, or something that is a pay-per-view as opposed to a commercial venture. In other words, you know what I'm saying? Are the network commercial episode series different from the other ones, or are they pretty much the same?
There are two major types of television, excluding reality and news and sports and all that side. But from the narrative side, there's the episodic television, which is you need to see the episode. I think I have this right. You need to see the episode before it. That's like Game of Thrones. Is like it matters what happens before it, and that is really important. And you need to. They stream on an online service very commonly now, what we call SVOD, subscription video on demand. And that type is very narrative. You almost shoot it like a movie, but with a little bit of a television pace. And the other type is more of the episode of the week, more your like CSIs, that you didn't really need to see the episode before this because you just want to know like who was the murderer this week. Those will be a little different. They'll have a different director every episode. They might have a different guest star every episode. It doesn't really matter the continuity from what happened before because everything kind of resets. Like The Simpsons, although an animated show, everything resets every episode.
Right. But there may be a thread, perhaps. There may be a thread that kind of where you have the same characters, obviously, but there may be some underlying thing where there's a relationship between two people, or if something is happening that you kind of find out that kind of would be a cliffhanger, but everything else is completely different within the confines of the major
the really
part of the
big
show.
Difference between those from an AD logistical standpoint is that a show that's more bottle episodes every week will almost always try and shoot on the same sets a lot. And an episodic television show, they may not care about that as much as that they may start out being at the military base for the first couple episodes. But then once the character is on the run from the military and excommunicated from everyone, we may never go back to that location the rest of the season. When, like a show like New Girl, which is more sitcom, like they want to go to that loft at least 5 days out of every 8 days that they shoot, because that's how they keep their money and keep it controlled. So that would be a big difference between the two of them. When I worked on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., we shot a lot on the same sets because they were in season 7 and ready to it's a sci-fi show. They want to keep it controlled.
So Scott,
that's a good question.
If you have a show that has a home base type of set, it's the CSI lab and all that. Well, in their budget, their pattern budget for how the series is going to go, they figured out that you're going to do 3 days in, meaning 3 days on the stage in their standing sets they own, they paid for, and you might have 4 or 5 days out, meaning on location all around. And so that's a way to conform the creative effort and the production effort. And that, okay, we got a big rainstorm coming, it's going to wipe out of our well, no problem. We'll just do our in days now. We'll go to the soundstage and we'll shoot interiors for those couple of days until storm passes. Then we'll go back out and do those exteriors. So there's that. But the other difference I just wanted to mention, Tyler, about what Scott's asking about is that if it's a Netflix type of show, they might be doing 10 episodes or 12 max. Mm-hmm. A commercial network series is going to be 22 episodes. I worked on a show once that did 26 episodes a year. And so that's very uncommon now. But the difference between organizing, shooting, planning, and executing whatever 10 or 12 episodes, it's literally half what the guys over at NBC or ABC have to do.
Yeah.
And that affects how much time you have to shoot and how you plan things. And you might have one director do much or most of it in that case. And you do schedule it.
It doesn't necessarily mean they'll shoot less total calendar days, because a Netflix show may be like, oh, the pilot is a 22-day pilot. Like, I've shot movies in less than 22 days, but just the first episode is 22 days. You know, it just depends on how they build it all up. And they might bring in a really big name director like I can't remember what it is. Yeah, I mean, someone big to do the pilot, and then like David Fincher did the pilot of House of Cards. He started that show off, and then he set the tone, and his shooting schedule was very long for the first couple episodes. But then he leaves, and then they bring the budget down more to, okay, now we're down to 10-day episodes.
And he established the look, the kind of feel. It's a moving camera show. It's a static camera show. It's a certain lighting look. And once that's established, then they stick with that. Everybody mimics that to some extent. So it has a conformity. But, you know, the Netflix type shows tend to be very big budget. They have more shooting days. And you have more time. They'll spend the whole year preparing those scripts and then shoot them. Unlike a network show, which is like they just finished last season, now they're suddenly into this season and they're throwing these things on the air rather quickly. And it's a different type of thing. It's a limited series. You know, I've done a couple of those. That's really nice. You do 6 hours and you're done, and you can really plan it. You can really handcraft it so that everybody feels better about doing those things.
Does it make any difference, really, then, Tyler, whether the type of show that it is? In other words, sci-fi versus action or drama or horror or something. I know there are challenges, as you said, on the shoot schedule, as far as having to bring in some people if there are special effects, or storyboarding it if there are going to be some more action things. So is there a difference from an AD's point of view for the genre?
Yeah, definitely. A drama show will often have two people talking in a room for the whole day, you know, or we may shoot just those two characters in this one location all day. And logistically, that's far less demanding. I also find it to be far less interesting to shoot, but, you know, those scenes definitely are important. And in dramas, it's more about the internalization of those characters and how they communicate with each other. But when you cut to an action, you know, the car chase is an important thing. And you know, will Tom Cruise make it out alive? That whole sequence could take weeks to film. And it could just be it could be one sentence on a page that you end up shooting for a whole month for an action stuff. On Ford vs. Ferrari is a perfect example that, you know, they describe the car chase sequence over a single page, but that could take a very long time and multiple units to actually film all the different camera angles. While a single page of dialogue may only take a single day to shoot, or even less, you know, half a day, quarter of a day. And then science fiction often has, the locations are not real. So they're usually on stage, and they have green screens or blue screens, depending. They have a spaceship built. And so those are on stage. So you often end up going to a studio every day, and you live indoors. The Mandalorian, for instance, shoots almost entirely indoors for the entire thing, and they have a large LED screen. Instead of a green screen, they have this really cool LED screen that they live project up the environment that they want to have them. And they film the character against the pre-generated, Tatooine landscape. It's a very new technology that's become.
Were you involved with that also?
No, I wish. I have several friends who work on it. Huge Star Wars fan, but I also at the same time, I'm happy to just watch it. So that's cool.
Mandalorian was awesome. Well, that was a great series.
You were talking about how like an interior dialogue scene, all day long is not all that interesting. So you worked on This Is Us, which is basically what we all call a talking heads show.
Yeah.
So people talking to each other, as opposed to an action show or whatever. It's not a props or action heavy show. It's talking heads. But what they're talking about is extremely.
So heart wrenching. Yeah, It's not to say that one is more important than another. It's just that I enjoy crashing cars and blowing up buildings, you know? So the little kid in me, every time I get to do anything like that, I'm like, oh, my job is so cool. Like, yeah. You know, even now I'm 12 years into my career, 13 years in my career. That stuff really excites me. So I try and do that a lot. You know, I do a lot of second units or action units, and I got to shoot in a water set last week on a show I can't talk about. But like that type of stuff's really exciting. So there's a big difference logistically to shooting those things.
I'd like to also just hear a couple of stories. I mean, first of all, the viewers and the listeners love stories. And so I'd like to hear good and bad stories. You just kind of mentioned a little bit about when you were working then on Westworld, that it was kind of a nightmare. You of course love working, and it's challenging, I'm sure, but still there are some challenges that are kind of nightmares. And on the other hand, there are some things probably are smooth. Do you like it when it's smooth or when it's rough? And just give me a couple of a good story and a bad story about one of your experiences.
Sure. I would. The bad one comes to mind first. There's always stories about people that are like your own boss is hard to work for, or may throw you under the bus, or something like that. Or I still had a lot to learn, and that made it hard on myself. But I remember working. I'm gonna not name any names just to keep it, but working with an actor that you've seen before, and this gentleman was very inebriated through the shoot, and he was telling the director how to direct, and he got real into the scene that they were doing, and he like grabbed the actress and kissed her in the scene, so she slapped him, none of which was scripted, and then he got explosive about that she slapped him, and she's like, you freaking kissed me, like that, you don't have permission to do that. And that was a huge thing that they ended up cutting it down to like a very minimal part in the film, and he's just a one-day actor. So stuff like that. I've had some interesting things of like having to wake up actors who are inebriated for one reason or another, or who have not been to sleep at all, and it's 9 o'clock in the morning, and they're like, just kind of came from the racetrack. Let's shoot this like intimate drama scene. And you're like, okay, let's get him some meds. Let's get him some water. Let's we need to order some takeout specific to, you do have to deal with that from time to time. But most of our job is to protect them as well and help them. So we try and do our best with that. So those are some of the horror stories, I guess. And also turnarounds have been really tough. I was working on Bright, a Will Smith movie with that's about orcs as cops. That's on Netflix, and they had some serious hard time shooting at night and getting everything they needed. So they had shot so long one week that they were shooting 14, 15-hour days and kept pushing the schedule. Tom knows this really well, but you could start at 7 a.m. in the morning, but then when you shoot till 10, you have turnarounds for the next day. So you can't call people back in at 6 o'clock in the morning the next day. They need time to go home and rest. And especially the actors, they have a 12-hour turnaround. So if you
don't have really a 9-to-5 job, is what you're telling me.
Oh gosh, no. Oh, what's that? What do you do with the second half of your day on a 9-to-5 for us? So I usually work 12 to 14 hours minimum pre-COVID. It's a little bit less.
With forced calls sometimes with the actors. They get 12 hours turnaround. They get from the time they sign out to the time they're called, it's 12 hours. Well, if you shot till midnight, you can't wait till noon.
Yeah.
They need them at 8 a.m. And then you have to the permission for a forced call, and then they get a premium pay for that. Yeah. And actors hate it. They're not so greedy that they're eager to come in. They're so wiped out from the previous day because it's exhausting what they do. So the AD has to try to figure out in the scheduling, how do we do our day scenes early in the week? So if we run a little long, it's not going to the turnarounds for the crew and the actors not going to kill us. But inevitably, by the end of the week, each day's gone a little longer. Friday night's death, because you're going to be shooting all your night work Thursday night, Friday night, because the turnaround on through the weekend is free. So you shoot till 2 in the morning on Friday, Saturday morning, and then you wrap and everybody's exhausted. But
then you come back to work on Monday morning at 6 a.m.
6 a.m. because the turnaround readjusts you. Yeah. So the AD has to figure that out and try to guide the director, somebody like me, Tom. we're killing us here, and we can't do this and this and this because of that and that and that. And then you try to figure out how, in everybody's best judgment, can we remedy what we're doing so we don't push that schedule and those turnarounds. It's because it's a death march. It's the Bataan death march, for the crew. And you're grinding them to pulp and the actors. And it's really hard, especially on a series, if you're doing that every single week for 9 months. It's not humane. And so that's where guys like Tyler come in to try to figure out how do we gracefully, efficiently avoid some of those turnaround issues so it's more predictable and normal. And then everybody's used to it. They've been doing this a long time. They know about the 14, 16-hour days, and they're used to it.
Well, how do you balance a family life then? Because I know you have a wife and kids, and as far as the weekends or holidays or between
shows, you've got a brand new kid.
Yeah, 3 months old. Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. It's difficult, but the first thing is you have a partner that understands what it's like, and there's kind of two ways to go about it. If you're full-time employed, you're working 60-hour weeks plus. 60 to 80-hour weeks, and you're working Monday through Friday, and you just don't really, you may come home and just get in bed and then wake up and leave for work, and that's it. And those jobs are really hard. But there's also, like right now, I'm just day playing. I'm just working as freelance. I mean, we're always freelance. We're never employed permanently on any show forever. At most, you'll be on a show for a whole season, and then maybe they invite you back for the next season. Maybe your boss doesn't get invited back, so you're by default not invited back because of that. You never really know. But right now I'm just day playing. Hey, thank you, Russell. Right now I'm just day playing. So I'm working Friday and Monday, Tuesday this week, but I didn't work anything else. And then I just got called for a job an hour before this that was like, hey, are you free Thursday, Saturday, Sunday to shoot a commercial? And I'm like, yeah, I'm free those days. So I'm going to shoot a commercial on those random days. And I have days off in between. But I have to balance those because they could conflict with each other.
But you have to take work when you get it, though, too.
Yeah, it's you're always saving is really, really important. Knowing that when you're working full time, we make pretty decent money. The unions really help give us a good wage, and you just really have to live within your means, knowing that you're only going to work 3/5 of the year. You're not going to work the whole year, Monday through Friday, all the time. You're going to have whole weeks off or months off even sometimes. And you need to balance your budget accordingly for that. And that really helps the family life that you're like, I might be gone for 4 months, but then I might be home for 3 months every single day. And I get to be the stay-home dad,
Well, Tyler, can you explain to everybody the term day player?
Yeah.
Why is there a market for a guy to come in for a day or two on anything? Other than a one-day shoot, what is the nature of that?
Someone who's staffed is you're on This Is Us and you're staffed. And every day that they shoot, you're employed. You're staffed for that. So if they shoot for 6 months, you're going to work for 6 months unless something were to change. A day player would be, hey, we're shooting the Vietnam sequence up at Lake Piru for season 4. And that is a big space, and there's a lot of extras and a lot going on. So we're going to need an additional AD for that day. We need extra grip guys. We need extra props people because we got all these soldiers to prop up. So we're going to bring in people just for that day that we're shooting it, just for that week. Or we need you Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So you'll be a day player for those things. And also, if you did a schedule and you just went way long and like, hey, we have to stop. Like, we're shooting too long, and they wrap for the day, there might be a second unit that comes back later and cleans that stuff up or does pickups or additional photography or an insert unit. These are all names of additional units that will shoot, and they might need a crew just for that stuff. I do a lot of that stuff as a key second AD. I'll come in and help organize, just clean up extra action sequences. It's like, hey, we need to get that guy blowing up in the corner. We didn't really have enough time to shoot that, so second unit will come in and film just that portion.
So we both mentioned the DGA a couple of times in this conversation. Can you explain for people what the value of being a Directors Guild of America member is as an assistant director, in my case, a director, but it's a union. Mm-hmm. Well, what is the value? And then how did you get in? Well, how does somebody become a DGA member?
Sure.
What did you have to go through to document your stuff to get it?
So the union's really great. They have a lovely team of people that make sure that we're taken care of, that we're not mistreated, or if we're fired for the wrong reason, they'll go after try and protect us. But the biggest thing that they do, the number one most practical reason, is that they set a minimum wage for everybody in their positions. So as a non-union person, I might have been making X as an assistant director, and when I joined the guild, I was making 2.5 times X, because they set the bare minimum of that. And that's the biggest thing that really helps, is the wages. It's also, the second thing is you have a pension and a health plan that you pay into, and the producers pay into, and that supports you. Having just had a baby, and my wife is in IATSE, the union that covers like props, camera, grip, electric, script supervisors, craft service. She has her union and she has her health insurance, but my health insurance also helps cover it. So anyways, that's the biggest reason, is that, among several others, but they can also help support you. And they don't help you find work. That is one thing that people often get confused about. I don't call the guild and be like, y'all got any work? And they're like, yeah, sure, go over here. It's more just they're making sure that I'm qualified to work. And only DGA qualified people can work on DGA shows. So getting in is really difficult. It's different for different unions. For IATSE people, you need to work like 100 days on non-union shows within a year and a half, or 30 days on a show that has flipped to union, which is when everyone goes on strike and flips over, which is a whole different conversation. For me, for the DGA, I needed to turn in 400 days as a non-union AD in order to join as a second AD and work in California. I wanted to join as a first AD, so I went all the way up to the next categories. I needed 520 days. So I went above and beyond, and I ended up turning in 567 days to join. I had to have a call sheet and a pay stub and a production report and my crew list and my deal memo for every job. I didn't always have every single one of them, but I came close. And I had these 4 thick binders about this thick each that I went over to the DGACA to turn in, which is the qualifying list. That a couple of nice people over there go through it all, and they want to make sure that you have put in your time, you put in your work. There's other ways. You could also join as a production assistant by having 600 days and then joining into what's called third area and then joining first area. Longer conversation. And you can also do the director's, the DGA training program, which is a program that specifically interviews talented individuals and puts them in a training program to be ADs. And they put them on, like, This Is Us might have a trainee, and the ADs there are responsible for kind of teaching them the ropes. I did not do that route. It's a great route. It's a great program if you can get into it. But it was also really nice. I had a lot of experience coming up as a non-union. I got to be a second. I got to be a key. I got to be a first AD and know what it's like to run my own production meeting. And so when I'm now into the full budget world, I have a little bit more experience than someone who was just a production assistant through there. And I value that. Other people are like, forget those guys. But it's great. I love the guild. I've been in it about 7 years, and the support there is really fantastic. It's a lot like college. It's a lot like what you put into the guild is what you get out. I have a great relationship with my professors, or had. So I got a lot out of my experience at Cal State. But other people might not have been as into it, but they didn't put their whole heart in. So I like the union. I put a lot of work into it and the relationships there, and I think it is very rewarding.
I can also tell you, from my point of view, I took a lot of advantage of all the seminars and screenings.
Yeah.
Where else can you go to a screening and have a panel between, Clint Eastwood, Peter Jackson, Robert,
yeah, exactly,
all sitting on the stage together, interviewed by a knowledgeable film expert, a DGA member, talking about how they make movies. Rob Reiner, all these guys together, whether it's them showing their movie and talking about it, or a bunch of them are all nominated for an award. But I went to a lot of those, and I learned a lot about directing and production just being in a room full of ADs and directors watching these things. It was very educational, and all the other things. They've got AD committees, I know, and all kinds of things that they're bringing everybody up to date on digital photography and anything you want to go to. They have a training, which is, you know, hard to get if you're not in that.
What I always tell to anyone who's interested, and if I'm talking right now to anyone and they're hearing me and they're like, man, I really would love to join that one day, then go to their website of the union in question and just look up what does it take to join that union. So you're armed with the information, and it's doable. It just takes time and effort and commitment to it. And they, you know, especially the guild, they don't want people who are just like, I guess I'll be an AD. They want people who are into it for quite some time.
Well, and you documented all that stuff.
Oh yeah.
That's a lot of days over. How many years did it take to accumulate?
It took me about 5.5 years.
So for 5.5 years, imagine.
But I could have joined sooner.
You're all those call sheets, all those pay stubs, all those production reports, all those crew sheets for 5 years.
Yeah.
Accumulating them, saving them, organizing them, knowing you were going to have to turn them into the Directors Guild to apply for membership.
It was a lot of scrambling back through emails to get a bunch of them, but yes.
But not everybody does. In other words, they'll work for 3 years and then, oh, gee, I was supposed to save all that? Well, you know, that's 3 years down the toilet because they don't care unless you can document that you did all these things. And so kudos to you, not only for what you've accomplished, but that you even pulled that off. There are a lot of people that would like to be in the DGA and are not because they did not organize themselves even through all the work that they might have done, you know, over however many years.
Is that an acronym that goes behind people's names on the credits that rolls by? If you remember,
it doesn't, but they will put the DGA logo at the. Actually, I don't even know if they do put the logo.
Yeah, they do. They'll do a Directors Guild, a Writers Guild sometimes.
Yeah, I think at the bottom.
PGA, the Producers Guild of America, in recent years, you see them. They're a big push to try to have them become a co-equal guild to the DGA and the Writers Guild. And so you see PGA after a Producers Guild member. Yeah, all their different producers, but they don't do that after a director's name.
The ADs are the first. Depending on if they show the production manager or not, they are like the first names that roll when the credits go to black, which is pretty cool. That sort of shows you they'll put the director and the writer and the production designer and a lot of the department heads at the front credits, at the opening credits. But then when the screen rolls, it's usually like unit production manager, first AD, second AD are the first three names after. And that just goes to show you how important the logistics side of it all is to make that happen. They put the second assistant director way lower down than that, but that's all right.
But it's Scott, I can assure you and people watching this that if they haven't figured it out by now, the assistant director is, imagine building a skyscraper and having an incompetent construction foreman on the building. Yeah, the foreman is the guy. That's Tyler, and people like him. Well, you got the blueprints, you got the workers, you got the this, you got the that, you got the architect breathing down your neck. You got all these people. Somebody has to move it forward, efficiently and on time, on schedule, on budget. And like the production manager you talked about is often not on the set; they're often back in the office, worrying about problems that are going to come up next week. And it's a really you're in the vortex of the storm in that case.
And you're not always doing the same job every time. Like I am a second on Friday, but I am firsting the commercial on Thursday. And last week I was a key on something else. Now, once you're on a job too, you may upgrade between them that maybe the key second has a family emergency or got another job and is leaving. And then they may bump up the second. They may bump up the base camp person. Or they may bring in somebody new. So there's a fluidity there. There is a hierarchy that you can sort of advance from one job to the next. For ADs, there is a natural progression to the category above you. There's no reason that they would hire me as a first AD on a large network television show when there are 50 other eligible first ADs out there that have been doing it for 20 years longer than me. So it's not a very it's a small community is what I mean to say. So
well,
even though
there is a reason, and that would be one of the directors you've worked with or one of the production managers you've worked with, like one of your production or one of your first or production manager gets on a series and they want to bring in a couple of people to be the first. They might have a favorite. What about that Tyler? Yeah, I liked working with him. He's ready. And suddenly you're the first on a series. It happens all the time. Or the line producer requests that they at least bring you in to interview you. And it does happen, of course. And, you're certainly ready for that if you want to do it, but you have a family and, I don't know if you want that grind yet.
Well, speaking of family, by the way, I know your time is kind of limited right there, Tyler, because you got
it is Freya's bedtime right now that I can hear.
Well, let's let him go.
Yeah. We'll take you out of this, but I want to thank you very much, Tom.
Hey, thanks for having me, you guys. This is a total pleasure. It was a blast.
Really fun. Good seeing you, man.
Our pleasure having you, man. A lot of information here this week. So if you got just a minute, as soon as we end the podcast, maybe if you want to hang around for a minute or two afterwards, just to say goodnight.
And Scott, if anybody else or your viewers has questions that they're really dying to ask, I don't want to speak for you, but if they contact you with questions and you send them to me, I'm happy to write back with those. I enjoy it. So
that'd be great. Tom, you want to give them your email or me or?
Give a Scott Magical Scott.
Well, you can send that to me if you have a question. I will put this over here then in the comments. But Scott at scottwellsmagic@gmail.com is the best over there. Then to reach me, and I will make sure that we get the questions over to Tyler if you have something then as well. So again, thank you very much again, Tyler.
Thanks for having me, guys.
For being with us. So say good night. Yeah.
Go Cal State Long Beach.
Okay, there we go. That's great. I'm going to quickly prepare this. Do you want to talk about next week while I'm putting this in our banner over here?
Sure. Our guest next week is a very prominent film and television composer. His name is Ron Raymond. He's Emmy nominated. He's a Cable Ace Award winner. He's done, 18 or 20 TV series, a bunch of movies, but his series started at, Fantasy Island and Heart to Heart and the Mike Hammer series all the way through to Christie and Walker, Texas Ranger, and a number of TV movies, and an extremely knowledgeable film composer who will talk about the craft because he's also a symphonic concert composer, and you talk about the difference between doing that and doing movies and TV, and how composers manipulate your emotions just through the music to make these things work and draw you into the story even deeper than the acting or the writing or whatever photography might suggest. So Ron Raymond next week, good friend, wonderful guy.
That's going to be great because music is such an integral part of movies and something a lot of times people will be remembering the music far longer than they do the people who were in it and everything that happened in the movie. So I'm excited about that then too.
Yeah, me too.
And briefly then also, I just want to show again this quick video that we had to promote your movie, rather your book.
And now a message from the goddess of love.
This book reminds me of the time I had my heart broken in Rome. Of course, that was 50 years ago. This book is smoking hot. And unfortunately, I've started smoking again. Thanks, Tom.
Available at Amazon.com.
There you go, Tom.
Well, that's Bella Shaw, who many people will remember as a CNN anchor for 10 years. And she did that completely on her own. She said, after she saw the promos that you did for my book, she said, I got to do something. And she sent that in. And I just added, the voiceover. But she wrote that and put on the makeup. And
That's nice.
I'm very grateful to her for that. So my book, Devious Thinking, is better for it. I'll tell you that.
So there you go. If you're interested, you can go to Bloomquist.com and you can order direct from him, of course, on Amazon and other places then too. So that's great. So let me just also say one thing here as we start to wrap a little bit about next week. We're going to be actually doing a pre-recorded show. We will be doing it live. I'll be showing the video live, but we'll be recording this prior to the evening because of some conflicts in time. But it will be at our regular time that we have, which is 7 o'clock Central Time. And so you can still tune in regularly, and I will be here to host this and to start the video, but we'll be talking again then with, I'm sorry, what's the gentleman's name again? Next week is?
Ron Raymond.
Ron Raymond will be our guest then next week. And so really, any other last words then right now, Tom, before we start to head out?
No, that's it. Thanks for plugging my book, and good to see you again, Scott.
And you as well. Until next week, that was Tom Blomquist over there. Where, yeah, there he is. This is Scotty out.
Thanks for being with us. Please join us again next time for Mincing Movie Magic.